Hey everybody, Economic Ninja here. Let's talk today about Russia and gold. Let's talk about BRICS and where the world is going right now. Great story out of Zero Hedge entitled Geopolitical Evolution, Russia's Rebellion, and a Return to Gold-Backed Currency. It says here the increasing numbers of nations seeking to join BRICS brings geopolitics into the spotlight at the time of writing. Existing members, those who have applied to join, and those expressing an interest, total 36 nations. Now stop right there and think about the purchasing power, the GDP, the combined assets of commodities with those 36 countries. This is not a joke. This should be taken very seriously. And at a time where Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell are telling you it's okay, de-dollarization isn't really that big of a deal, and we're going to weather the storm. Remember that Ben Bernanke also told you there was no problems in the MBS market and the housing market was fine in mid-2005 to 2006. Remember that. Never, ever, ever forget it. Also remind yourself that Janet Yellen in 2017 said that we would never, ever see a banking crisis in our lifetimes, that at which we saw in 2008. And just so you know, 8 weeks ago, it got bigger than 2008. These people are lying to you, all right? This is very important for us to understand this. If you have a heart for your country, and I'm talking to Americans right now, the most important thing you can do is get out of debt and start to build wealth, real wealth with gold, silver, possibly Bitcoin. Just know that there's a lot of cycles involved there. I'm personally not buying that right now. I'm also not selling, but I believe there's just a ton of derivatives attached to the stock market. But with that being said, let's dive into what's going on with Russia. Plans for a new trade currency backed by gold. With all these countries, they're all out there. Every single one of these countries that have applied for BRICS or already part of BRICS, their central banks have been buying gold hand over fist. And what's scary is I believe that some of the gold, and I know this for a fact down at the Garment District in Los Angeles, finds its way from pawn shops, melted down, assayed, put on a ship, and sent over to China. This has been going on for over 2 decades. And so I believe they are slowly but surely draining our country of its gold. And that's why we have to fight back, okay? But right now, they are planning a new trade currency backed in gold. If you think for a second that the US dollar will be able to compete with that, we will not. If you're listening to Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen, I think that I've got some waterfront property in Arizona that I really want to sell you. But honestly, I don't even want to sell it to you, even though it's fake. Why? Because I don't even want to talk or hang out with people that are so deceived. And if the last 3 years have taught you anything about people that are easily deceived, you know what I'm talking about. It says right here, the trade currency backed by gold will be on the agenda for the BRICS meeting in Johannesburg in August. Remember, this is the meeting where certain countries have said we've issued arrest warrants for Putin. We're trying to keep him away. The US is trying to listen in on these meetings. France is begging for a seat at the table to be able to just listen. They don't even want to speak. They understand how big of a deal this is. In this article, the geopolitical aspects of the introduction are considered and the indications of how it will involve gold are discussed. The mechanics of this project are then suggested. But first we look at the situation in Ukraine, attempting to put a recent Wagner rebellion into context. Furthermore, Russia's deteriorating trade surplus weakness of the ruble and rising bond yields suggest that it's time for President Putin to put an end to Ukraine's misery. He is likely to do this by attacking Kiev, which is only 60 miles from Belarus, while the bulk of Ukraine's army is distracted by operations over 400 miles to the south and east. That would put political tensions on a whole nother level. Now it says here, given the hysteria in the Western press over the Wagner Group's alleged coup attempt, it is time for an update on the battle between the hegemons. But I shall commence with an attempt to put the leader of Wagner's mercenary group's supposed coup attempt to bed. It emerges that Western intelligence knew something was up as much as 10 days before the dispute between Wagner and the Russian Defense Ministry became evident. Just put type 1 down there if you think the CIA had anything to do with this. Before Wagner troops began to advance on Rostov, And then on to Moscow. Last weekend, British officials had an extremely detailed and accurate picture of the mutiny plans. It was revealed yesterday that details were shared by U.S. intelligence. So I'm not going to get too far into this, but my point being is that we had our hand in this, all right? And it didn't work. And it almost seems like every time we as a nation, the US government tries to attack Russia, especially like with the recent sanctions a couple of years ago when they moved into Ukraine, or a year and a half ago, the ruble collapsed and then it exploded back higher. I want people to understand how big of a deal this is, okay? Because when you own gold, when you own oil, when you have commodities, water, things like that, food production, you hold the cards. And Russia is one of those countries that is a commodity rich nation. And no Western media propaganda is going to lie through that. They can't get enough people to believe it, okay? Because the facts are baked in right there. Now, going into Russia's situation, we were originally told that sanctions would rapidly bring Russia to her knees and force the Russian people to overthrow Putin. Remember, this was all big, in Western media back when the ruble was crashing. But it says neither have materialized, and the evidence is that the Russian economy is stronger today than it was a year ago, and Putin's public backing remains high. Since early 2022, Russia's economy had officially been a mild recession, but in April, economic activity was recorded as rising sharply due to buoyant industrial production and retail sales. Sanctions never work, and a sanctioned nation rapidly adapts. Furthermore, while sanctions have focused on hitting Russian oligarchs, a low flat 13% income tax and corporate tax of 20% on company profits means that Russia's SMEs, artisans, and shopkeepers are doing well. Stop right there and remember what happened when Trump took office. What was one of the first things he did? He slashed the corporate tax. Think about that. What happened when all of a sudden Biden comes in? Tens of thousands of IRS agents are hired. Literally in their job description, they said you are going to be armed and you may have to shoot to kill. Think about what's happening right now. Think about the brown coats, brown shirts. Sorry, my mind's spinning because what's scary is that most people don't understand how serious these days are. There are presidents like our current one that says no new taxes. And we're in a moment where taxes aren't rising, they're taking away our tax benefits. I've spoken about how a lot of business owners used to be able to write off 100% of the cost of a specific vehicle. Now they can only write off 90% of it. There are so many things that we are being attacked with, not only inflation, which is a hidden stealth tax, but also we're dealing with we're losing certain tax benefits, right? This is getting worse, but Russia understands that. So they're taxing their people less and they're increasing productivity. Okay. Very, very, very important to understand. It says here, it also explains Putin's continually high approval ratings, but Russia's economy has far greater potential under sound money and lower interest rates. Furthermore, with consumer price inflation running at about 2.5%, how do you feel about that? Now, I believe that inflation numbers by any government are always lower than they really are, okay? But when our official numbers are much higher than that, Europe's are much, much higher than that. We have places in Europe that are 8%. We have the US saying, 5 and 6%. With their stated numbers of 2.6% domestic inflation, their economy is probably about to start rip-roaring. Very, very important for people to understand that. Russia's balance of payments has been declining sharply, according to the central bank. The current account surplus between January and May was 22.8 billion, equivalent compared to 123 billion for the same period last year. So think about that. Russia's balance of payments are declining sharply, going from 123 billion to 22 billion. They're getting out of debt. This decline was due to lower oil and commodity prices. I'm sorry, I'm spinning my facts and figures around. Sorry. It says here, for the same period 1 year, the decline was due to lower oil and commodity prices, as well as marginally lower export and higher import volumes. The ruble has declined and interest rates have recently risen, as charts below illustrate, and they show you some charts about it. But I want people to understand, even though the interest rates have increased, overall, the Russian economy is getting stronger. Okay. To have such volatility in the exchange rate and interest rates is the greatest weakness in the Russian economic condition. The way to fix it is for the ruble to adopt a proper gold standard, and between the banks, the Bank of Russia's official gold reserves, Russia's National Wealth Fund, and the Gokren Precious Metals Fund, there are ample bullion resources to establish it. Point being is this: with a low interest rate, with a low taxation on its people, its GDP will grow slowly because the productivity of businesses and individuals will increase because they'll have more money in their pocket to spend in the real economy than give it to the government, right? At the same time, Russia, we know, owns a lot of gold, and they are buyers of gold. They appreciate gold. You see the pictures of Putin holding the gold bars. We see all kinds of other country leaders holding gold bars. We don't see our country's leader holding gold bars. As a matter of fact, our country's leader is not even allowed in Fort Knox because they're afraid that he's going to say something stupid like he always does and goes, "Where's the gold?" Because that's the last thing they want. We are in very serious times, and I believe this is the time to be loving the idea of buying a little bit of gold. Again, not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but I want to own God's money going into very serious economic times, not Satan's money. A bunch of fiat paper currency that's literally printed in a machine, and it's printed with tons of satanic symbols on it. Think about that. So we have the world's countries coming together and preparing a gold-backed currency right now, 36 nations. This is intense, guys. It's getting bigger and bigger literally every day. And by this fall, I believe it's going to be in rapid speed increasing. And the de-dollarization, no matter what your Fed president or your Treasury secretary tell you, it's in trouble. Our currency's in trouble. Guys, I hope you got something out of this. The Economic Ninja is out.